Hello, this is Kristan Weisdack, CEO and founder of BehaviorWorx of Southwestern Pa, for another Work Through It Wednesday. This is a continuation of last week's refusal video. If you remember, we talked about some of the reasons that children are refusing, but also what you can do. What are some quick win strategies to help you when your student is just really struggling in the classroom? And something that happened to me this week in early intervention, and it's a behavioral intervention that I haven't mentioned really in a while. It's called behavioral momentum. So before we get into how to use that when a child is refusing, again, what I want you to do is use this time to really help you understand how to use that 4-quadrant sheet: the attention, escape, avoidance, gain tangible, and self-stimulatory. If you don't know what that is, join our email list, and it's a free download that you can use when you're following along with our Work Through It Wednesday videos. You'll have 2 sheets that you get. It'll include the 4-quadrant sheet where it says attention, escape, avoidance, gain tangible, self-stimulatory. And then at the bottom, there's a lot of different check boxes you'll see for like food, oxygen, water, sleep, activity, pain, and temperature, which really predict the likelihood of behavior to happen if, let's say, a child has too little food and hangry happens, or they haven't had anything to drink in a while, or they haven't really had a chance to get up and move in a while. The second sheet that you'll receive is an ABC chart. So it's antecedent, behavior, and consequence, and it's broken down into 2 sections. At the top, it says what's happening now, and at the bottom, it says what we want to have happen. So let's go ahead and get into the behavioral momentum technique when there's refusal. So you're always going to start out in filling out that 4-quadrant sheet. Remember, in that quadrant for attention, we're going to go ahead and write no attention was given. Then in the escape avoidance quadrant, you write a demand was presented. And then in that gain tangible quadrant, it's pretty self-explanatory that that person was acting that way. Now, again, I say person because it doesn't necessarily have to be a child, but it may be an adolescent or adult that we're working with in that situation. And then self-stimulatory is just really the person is doing that to regulate their body. And this can be rocking, flapping, turning themselves upside down, or doing a lot of different things that regulate the body. You know, that you might have even done this before. If you're in a meeting and you're shaking your leg or tapping your pencil, it's something to help alert your body to help you stay awake during that meeting. And then at the bottom, we're going to circle everything at the bottom: the food, oxygen, water, sleep, activity, pain, and temperature, and circle no attention was given, demand was presented, gain tangible, and then circle regulating the behavior or regulating the body in that self-stimulatory quadrant. The great thing is that everything that you have just circled is going to transfer over into that antecedent column. And there's always a match between what purpose the behavior was trying to serve as an antecedent and the consequence for that behavior. So let's say that the child wanted attention for that behavior because no attention was being given. They acted in a certain way and they received the behavior. So there's a match between what they wanted to get out of it and what they actually received. And this is why we see behaviors continue to happen. So really, as you're filling out that ABC chart, you put in there the behavior was refusal to work. So you're always going to want to identify specifically what refusal to work means. Now, if you remember from last week, you can always go back and watch the other video, but we talked about crumbling up papers in the classroom and throwing them to the floor. So we always want to make sure to specifically define that behavior, because if it's not just you collecting data on that behavior, the teachers, other caregivers, paraprofessionals, whoever else might be in that setting with that child has to be able to collect data on that same behavior. You want to have what's called inter-rater reliability, that no matter who's collecting data on that behavior, it's all going to be collected in the same way for the same behavior. So that behavior, again, is refusal. They're crumbling their paper and throwing them to the floor. What's happening now in the antecedent column is a demand was presented. So demand is presented. They're refusing to work by crumbling up papers and throwing them on the floor. And the consequence that may be happening right now is that they're getting out of work, right? So that behavior is meeting that need. And then at the bottom of that sheet, what we want to have happen is when a demand was presented, the behavior is we want work completion, and then the consequence is that they get praise or they get to move on to the next desired activity. And so one of the other things that you can do, we talked about a few strategies last week, but the strategy that I wanted to talk to you today about is behavioral momentum. And so what I mean by behavioral momentum is, let's say I was working in early intervention with a kiddo and we're working on shape sorting because we're working on attention to task. And let's say that a child is getting really good at being able to put the circle and the star shape in the shape sorter, but they're having trouble with, let's say, the hexagon and the trapezoid, And so what we want to do is the behavioral momentum technique, instead of asking them to always go to the shapes that are difficult, I'm going to make it so that they have 2 or 3 of the shapes that they might have mastered before we try the more difficult one. So this is where we're building that behavioral momentum. We're making it so that they're getting reinforced for their efforts, and we intersperse the things that are more difficult that they're learning. And so this really helps with their scaffolding and working in that zone of proximal development. So these are all early intervention human development terms that really help us understand how we can step-by-step guide that child's learning, or that adolescent's or that adult's learning. So this could be even with math concepts. So let's say that you're a classroom teacher and you're introducing subtraction, and it's really difficult for that child. So what you want to look at is, what other concepts in math has that child mastered? Are they able to do really great addition problems, and they're mastered those well, maybe 1 or 2 column addition problems. So maybe I'm going to have 3 or 4 of those, and then I'm going to have the new concept, the subtraction problem. And so you can use this with a variety of things depending on what you're doing with that child, whether it's puzzles, shape sorters, math problems, so on and so forth. Using that behavioral momentum technique is just one way that we can change what's happening now to what we want to have happen. So right now it's that refusal to work, and then we want that work completion. So using that behavioral momentum technique, if you try this in your classroom or in early intervention, I'd love to hear feedback about how it's going. Send us some comments so that we can help understand how to make these strategies more focused on your wants, your needs, but also understanding how can we make those things go better. You can say, well, we tried this in this setting and it didn't go well. We can help provide that feedback on how to make it go better the next time. So we'd love to hear from you for our Work Through It Wednesday submission for next week. If you work in early intervention, or you're a classroom teacher, or even you're working, like I said, with adolescents or adults with behavioral concerns or autism, send us the information for Work Through It Wednesday to that behaviorworxpa@gmail.com. It's behaviorworxpa@gmail.com. Send it over to us and we will help you work through it. So take care, and we will see you right here next week at the same time. Have a good day. Bye-bye.